It's looking more and more likely that the so-called January 6th rebellion was a distraction orchestrated by the FBI itself. This is big news. I'm Dr. Duke, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Before we start, I do want to remind our audience that we're not just about bringing you the problems in education, but also the solutions. Our Judeo-Christian online classical school, FreedomProject Academy, is now enrolling students for the fall. I encourage everyone to request a free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com. Take back your kids' education. Take them to Freedom Project Academy. All right? It's time for Katie to give us a look at the health of our squalid republic.
Good day and fine evening, Healthy Republic team. If you're new to this neck of the woods, I'm Katie, and I'm trying to keep it as real as Nancy Pelosi's teeth by giving you the health status of this once fine country. Today, it's all about the G7 summit as the British hosted this year. But before we get to it, please subscribe and share the video. Then for today's question, and please put some thought into this one because I do read these comments and I need entertainment. If you had to choose one of the G7 leaders to live with on a deserted island for 1 month, who would you choose and why? Let me know in the comments below. Now, who are these G7 leaders you have to choose from? Because unlike Joe Biden thought, they are not, in fact, Gatorade bottles. The G7 is a group of the world leaders from the most prominent countries: United States, UK, Japan, Canada, France, Germany, and Italy. But as you can see from Joe's confused look, there are actually more attendees, including Australia, India, South Korea, South Africa, and reps from the European Union. And this year's summit really started with a bump in Cornwall, England. Canada. Up there, they take off the mask after the elbow bump, Justin Trudeau? If for no other reason, that clip right there, whatever that was, is why we have told the British to pound tea. We're out of there. Even the Queen Mum, Queen Elizabeth II, who is 17 years Joe Biden Sr., was more with it and entertaining than anything Biden could muster.
Are you supposed to be looking as if you're enjoying it?
Yes, it would definitely. If you could.
What's truly sad is the entertainment that Biden brought embarrassment on the country, and really himself. But he doesn't even know it because he truly is in a state of mental decline that keeps playing out for all to see. Let's roll through them, beginning with Vladimir Putin, the president-dictator of Russia, which dropped out of what was the G8 during the Obama era. But Vlad was a topic of discussion, and Joe met with him in Geneva after leaving this year's G7 summit. Now, in March, Biden said that Putin was a killer.
So you know Vladimir Putin, you think he's a killer?
I do.
In March, April, May, June, Joe can't even put words together.
What do you say to Vladimir Putin?
To answer the first question, I'm laughing too. They actually, well, look, I mean, he has made clear that the answer is, I believe he has in the past essentially acknowledged that he was, there are certain things that he would do or did do. But look, when I was asked that question on air, I answered it honestly. But it's not much of a, I don't think it matters a whole lot in terms of this next meeting we're about to have.
Yeah, you guys, it doesn't matter if Putin is a killer. It just matters that Orange Man's still bad. He's still the one who is a Nazi and a dictator and, stop paying attention to Biden, who is basically incoherent and addled. But don't take my word for it. Let's listen to the dictator. The real one. Putin.
President Biden, of course, is radically different from Trump because President Biden is a career man. He has spent virtually his entire adulthood in politics. Just think of the number of years he spent in the Senate. A different kind of person. And it is my great hope that, yes, there are some advantages, some disadvantages, but there will not be any impulse-based movements on behalf of the sitting U.S. president.
Which means that Putin can easily steal his lunch money. But it's really our lunch money. So I hope you're not hungry, because there's not enough goulash in the gulag to feed all of you. But don't worry, team. It'll be just fine because we have a doctor in the building to make everything better, or at least make you feel better. It's the great Dr. Jill Biden, here to save the day on the international stage. Doctor, how will you make our lives all unicorns and rainbows?
Oh, the love? Yeah. Well, I think that we're bringing love from America. I think that this is a global conference and we're trying to bring unity across the globe, and I think that's important right now.
So while you're spreading the love, what is the leader of the free world doing?
Oh, I think he's so well prepared. I mean, he's been studying for weeks, working up to today.
Can you imagine? There's Joe in the Oval Office at the Resolute desk, and Dr. Jill right beside him, calmly saying, "Okay, Joey, now if you study real hard for the next 15 minutes, we'll have juice and then you can take a nap." Seriously though, if you listen to her again, the great doctor actually slips and says, "we," when saying who's been preparing for the G7, because we know who's pulling those strings. And then she flaunted it. Prepping for G7. She forgot to add, while Joe takes his second nap of the day. Or maybe he's in a timeout.
Joe, pay attention.
Don't blame Joe. It was probably the mask's fault. He couldn't hear with it on his face. We know it takes but one clip to demonstrate Joe is being inept, but he's trying.
I'm sorry, I'm going to get in trouble with staff if I don't do this the right way. Jennifer Jacob, Bloomberg.
If he's not being directed what to say, he's being directed where to go, which is to say away from all reporters so he can't gaffe another thing.
How are your meetings going here in Cornwall?
Very well.
Come on.
He's a fumbling, bumbling, stumbling old man.
I keep forgetting I'm president.
But as always, just give him time. Right, see, this is the shtick. Give him time. He's only been in public office for 50 years. You guys, give him time. He's earned it.
Come on, give me a break, man.
Come on, you guys.
That's a good start. I've only been here 6 weeks, pal. Okay, give me a break. 120 days. Give me a break. Need time. I think the epiphany is going to come between now and 2022.
Give me a break.
Democracy's having a hard time functioning.
Democracy's not the only one. So that right there is the President of the United States on the international stage, in a nutshell. Even though he belongs in a nut house, he is the man with the launch codes. Now tell me if you are resting easy tonight, because we know he is. Until next time, stay healthy, America.
We are joined now by Vicki McKenna for our weekly Culture Cast segment. Always sparks flying when we get together, and boy, there is some really, really treasonous stuff going on. There's really ways in which this government are doing things that has not been done, I can imagine, in the history of the Republic, assuming we still have one. Vicki, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Duke. And yeah, we are goose stepping toward authoritarianism. You know what, you could even say we're there, and almost nobody's noticing, at least not noticing in any capacity that's raising alarms for the general population of the American people. But things that happen in East Germany, things that happen in the Soviet Union, things that we are reading about now from defectors coming from North Korea, these are things that are happening in the United States. And that's very, very concerning, particularly when we're talking about the constraints, deliberate constraints being put on the Bill of Rights.
Well, Tucker Carlson had an explosive segment yesterday explaining just this phenomenon, and he based it on a new article that was written by Revolver. Tell us what the article had to say, Vicki.
This is worth checking out. If there's one thing you would read today, it would be at revolver.news, and it is the story about the unindicted co-conspirators in the in the January 6th Capitol protests. And what the article details is the actual criminal charges that, the criminal complaints that were filed against multiple people. And remember, multiple people, we're talking about a nationwide dragnet. I'm not sure how many people saw the billboards in their areas, but certainly where I live, there were billboards advertising, if you saw anyone who mentioned that they went to the Capitol, contact the FBI immediately. And what the criminal complaints detailed, according to Revolver, is that there were multiple unindicted co-conspirators. And as they looked deeper into the criminal complaints, what they discovered was that in very many cases, the unindicted co-conspirators either participated in the exact same kind of activity that resulted in charges against people who are now sitting in solitary confinement without bail in the DC jail, or worse behavior than the folks who are actually charged. And what the conclusion from the reporters on this was is it's very likely that the unindicted co-conspirators are either paid for confidential informants by the FBI or actual undercover FBI employees themselves. And so what you find when you read this article and you actually get to read some of the criminal complaints is that it appears that the unindicted co-conspirators fomented the mayhem, fomented the chaos, created the conditions, and that the folks who were actually charged were the ones that were just simply following along.
For a long time, we knew that there were many liberal operatives in the crowd, that this was not simply Bubba and his banjo-playing conservative white men attacking the so-called attacking the Capitol building. We've known for a long time that there have been all sorts of strange characters from the left who were in those that so-called riot. Now what we're finding out is that it's very plausible to believe that the FBI staged this entire thing as a way of punctuating and forgetting, and in my mind, getting people to stop talking about the questionable election results, and now showing you this is why we had to get Trump, because of this violent attack that was coming.
Yes, and also this is leading every declaration that the president has made about domestic extremism since January 6th. It is a very, very good thing the Republicans didn't vote in favor of a 9/11 style commission for the January 6th riots, because it would have simply been a way to build a scaffolding to hang all of these alarmist charges on. Merrick Garland yesterday said that what we're looking for is people who believe in the superiority of the white race, and they are, willing to commit violent acts of extremism. And so that's the single largest terrorist threat. They wanted to hang everything on the scaffolding that was going to be built by that 9/11 style commission on 1/6. Now we've got some reporting that strongly suggests that there does need to be an investigation of 1/6, but not the way the Democrats envision it, not a narrative creating exercise, but an actual investigation. You see what happens when real reporters start digging into stuff that is sitting in plain sight. And it strongly suggests that the United States government fomented the violence that has now been used to justify domestic surveillance programs that were lauded by Merrick Garland and the DOJ yesterday, declarations that 50% of the country are nothing more than would-be violent white supremacists, and a whole host of other things.
And if this is true, and there's a lot of smoke here, we'll see if there's fire behind it. If this is true, this fits, right? That as an analogy, the white male in the 2020s is setting up to be the Jew of the 1930s. Responsible for all these things, a catch-all category, the scapegoat on which this kind of radical rethinking of government is going to take place at the expense of white males.
Now, remember, a lot of the folks that were at the Capitol on January 6th, and people who are members of Oath Keepers, or people who are members, I'm not sure you can be a member of the 3%ers, but people who declare themselves that way, or folks who are affiliated with the Proud Boys, a lot of these folks are veterans. And so it is also teed up the Defense Department to claim that what it has to do is cleanse the ranks of the United States military for anybody who would have questioned the integrity of the last election, or somebody who would reject CRT, somebody who would reject this neo-Marxism. And it is so it's given license to Lloyd Austin to do to the military what Joe Biden wants to do to the rest of the country, what Merrick Garland wants to do to the rest of the country, what the teachers union wants to do to the schools. And it's all based on the 1/6 lie that this was an armed insurrection meant to overthrow the United States government. The more you look at these documents, as Revolver did, and I know that they're going to be doing more digging. I also know that Senator Johnson is also going to be doing some digging on this. The more you question the actual premise of the narrative itself, and that is that there were any groups there that were going to Washington, D.C. specifically with the goal of creating chaos or a riot or mayhem of any kind, that the ones who did were stoked on by employees of the federal government who needed to have something to make their case.
Back for our second segment with Vicki McKenna on CultureCast. Vicki, we talked a lot about the Revolver report, the idea that maybe it seems like the FBI had a huge plan in orchestrating the 1/6 so-called riot, that it was not a spontaneous riot. It was not an attempt by conservatives to overthrow the government. It was an orchestrated plan to make this seem this way. And it just, as we said at the end of the last segment, this alone, there's nothing before this that really happened in Trump's administration. There's nothing since January 1st that would suggest that we have this huge problem with white males trying to overthrow the government. Nevertheless, because of that one instant, which now looks like it may have been staged to some large degree, this is the reason why the military now is brainwashing cadets to believe all of this nonsense, critical race theory. It's forcing veterans who are retiring into programs that will de-weaponize them. It's what's going on with critical race theory in the schools. So on that one incident, Vicki, Joe Biden is setting aside, start with this, he's setting aside $100 million to surveil his own people. Talk about that.
He's setting aside $100 million to hire agents to partner with big tech companies to create, quote, digital literacy programs that would monitor what you post on social media in order to ferret out this violent white supremacy that apparently exists, though none of us can actually point to it and identify where it's going on. We point to riots in Portland or in Seattle or in Baltimore or in Kenosha, and we're not seeing the violent white supremacy who wants to, declare the superiority of the white race. What we're seeing are flags for Antifa, flags for BLM, flags for other types of equity or anti-racism groups that are the ones starting the fires. So you're exactly right. The exact opposite of what we're being told is a threat is what the actual threat is. And the government is ignoring that. I know Senator Johnson has actually asked Merrick Garland in the Department of Justice and the FBI to please explain why federal charges are being dropped against people who attack federal buildings in Portland or attack federal buildings in Seattle or attack federal buildings across the United States in the name of anti-racism or Black Lives Matter. And the same is not happening to, a bunch of folks who are right now, a lot of them sitting in solitary confinement in a D.C. jail without the ability to bail themselves out, and they have been there for 5 months. He wants the answers to that. But we know the answer. The answer is this, that 1/6 was used now to justify any manner of insane, un-American, unconstitutional, Stasi-like actions that this administration wants to take. And they will take as much as they can, by the way, using the executive authority that the Biden administration has, but they're also going to have to propose legislation. So we have two pieces of legislation. One is $100 million to hire agents and partner with big tech to surveil us, a la, the CCP's social credit system. And another one is a program to encourage people to rat out their neighbors and family members if they've noticed any type of, quote, extremist behavior or behavior that might indicate that they're violent. And then you have a companion, which is Merrick Garland issuing a piece of legislation, a call for passage of a piece of legislation that would allow the United States government to partner with also civilian law enforcement services to confiscate guns from people who are declared to be extremists or have the potential for violence, according to the definitions of domestic extremism, new to all of us, but now accepted by the Biden administration.
And you hit on something earlier in your comment there that I think has to be magnified. Extremism is defined now exclusively by the progressive left. They are the only ones who are allowed to do it. You challenge their definition, and Facebook and Twitter and everybody's going to come down on you. You're going to get canceled. Only the progressive left can tell you what an extremist is. And that's why Antifa is not, but what you and I, but what white conservatives are. right? Antifa's not a problem. Black Lives Matter and its protests are not a problem. Anarchists in Seattle and Portland and all across the country who want to burn things down, they're not the issue. Radical college professors who, like the one we talked about last week, who want to put 5 bullets in the brains of white people, they're not a problem. The white people getting shot in the head, they're apparently the problem. And this is what's so Orwellian about this, right? It reeks of scapegoatism. It has nothing at all to do with any reality. You said it. Look around you. I don't know. I mean, you and I are conservatives. You think the so-called white supremacists would be buzzing around us. I've never met one. I'm still waiting to meet one. And I've lived in the South. I never met one there either. Where are they? Where are these people that you're saying are so dangerous? Well, when you really look at it, you and I are those people, right? Anybody who challenges the left at all.
Right, because remember, extremism is defined as somebody who thinks that there's a reason to question the integrity of the last election. Extremism is somebody who believes in the Second Amendment, who believes in the right to keep and bear arms, and who actually understands the purpose of the Second Amendment was to defend against an authoritarian, tyrannical government. You say things like that out loud, or you assert your right to defense, and that automatically makes you an extremist. You're somebody who says that my first duty is an oath to uphold this Constitution, like the Oath Keepers, who are veterans and former law enforcement. Veterans and former law enforcement cannot be trusted. They're the new domestic extremists. But a crazy woman who wants to put 5 bullets into the head of white people because she loathes them so much, or Antifa. Or Black Lives Matter, who wants to burn down cities and declare an end to capitalism and the patriarchy and the Bill of Rights itself. No. They're the mainstream. The rest of us are the ones that the government has to be worried about. And make no mistake, people, we're not exaggerating. That's exactly what this government is saying.
It's time for some real education. This is the concluding day of our Christian Renaissance Humanist quote day. We've decided to look at what the great first generation of really Western serious scholars, the Christian humanists from about the 14th to the 16th century, came up with this idea of Christianity, very serious Christianity, but that was dedicated to the pursuit of humanist aims, right? A Christian education that made one not just fit for heaven, but one better fit to live on this earth. And our closing Renaissance humanist is no less a figure than Sir Thomas More. Born in 1478, beheaded by King Henry VIII in 1535, St. Thomas More is venerated as a saint in the Catholic Church. He was a lawyer, judge, social philosopher, author, statesman, and noted Renaissance humanist. He served as Henry's Lord High Chancellor. He wrote the book Utopia, among other works, and he is one of the most prescient thinkers on education I have ever met. In fact, to give you an example, not only was he the very first person to teach Greek in English schools in the late 15th century, before anywhere else in England, he recognized to be a true scholar, at least in the 15th century, you needed the Greek as well as the Latin. But he also taught his daughter, gave her a college education, a first-rate college education, at a time when women weren't being educated. He recognized that his own daughter had an intellect and a mind, and a very quick one. And so he gave her a full education, which was a highlight of her life and their relationship. So take a look at some of our Thomas More quotes. Quote, "One of the greatest problems of our time is that many are schooled, but few are educated." That's exactly right. Thomas More sort of invented the phrase that people are educated beyond their knowledge, that just because you have so many years in school and so many pieces of paper that say you graduated, most people are educated beyond their knowledge. So one of the greatest problems of our time is that many are schooled, but few are educated. How about this quote? "Most people know nothing about learning, and many despise it. Dummies reject as too hard whatever is not dumb." It's pure dummyish, right? Most people know nothing about learning, and many despise learning. That doesn't improve anything other than the fact that idiots will reject anything that's too hard. How about this quote? "For if you suffer your people to be ill-educated and their manners to be corrupted from their infancy, and then you punish them for those crimes to which their first education disposed them, what else is to be concluded from this, but that you first make thieves and then punish them?" If you give them the education of a thief and they behave like thieves and then you punish them for thievery, well, who's really to blame for that? The education we give our kids is our responsibility as much as theirs. How about this quote? "Every tribulation which ever comes our way either is sent to be medicinal, to help us, if we will take it as such, or may become medicinal if we will take it such, or is better than medicinal unless we forsake it." All tribulations are given to us by God, and if we take it in the right mind, it will lead to better things. If we forsake this tribulation and falter, we will be lost. And how about this quote? "God made the angels to show him splendor, as he made animals for their innocence and plants for their simplicity. But man he made to serve God, to serve him wittily in the tangle of his mind." All right, just a quick reminder that the best way to access our content is to download Freedom Project Media app. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store, and once you download the free app, hit notify so we can send you our programs. And if you enjoy this content, do please consider the Patriot Club. One-time tax-deductible donation of $99, and we'll get you all these stories every day and this beautiful signature tumbler as well. That's patriotclub.us. Now we want to take a moment to show some love to our Patriot Club members. Today we'd like to give a shout out to Rosalie from Deming, New Mexico. Rosalie, thanks for your support. We really appreciate it. It's always a dry heat out there, isn't it? And that's going to do it for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.